Okay. So I forgot to check the live chat. Yeah, hang on, waiting for the stream to start. Okay, so I forgot to check the live chat, and someone just asked really quickly, what is the history of Ormus, and how did you find out about it or get into it? Great question. My understanding at this time is, and I'm not a historian, I don't read about this stuff anymore, but in my research originally, my understanding was that ORMES, ORMES, as an acronym, which stands for Orbitally Rearranged Monatomic Elements, yeah, um, were discovered in the 90s, I think, by David Hudson. He was like I forget what he was. I'm not going to make it. They were doing some type of mining, and as they were churning up the earth, they found this white powdery substance that just fell out of the rocks, and they were like, "What is this stuff?" You know, some weird, I don't know. So they took it to the lab and analyzed it, and lo and behold, it was something they hadn't really discovered before. It doesn't occur, I mean, it occurs everywhere in that it is in everything. It's just that it needs to be taken out and concentrated so that we can take it in a form that's usable to us. So for us, or for me personally, I do the thing, I extract it from sea salt. Sea salt is mineral rich, it's easily dissolved into water. You have a perfect base from which to extract Ormus. Now again, ORMES, Ormus is um, I think a patented name, and so in order to generically use it and call it, people started calling it Ormus just because that's what it sounds like when you pronounce the acronym Ormus, and so they just started spelling it ORMUS. To talk about it in general term, because the ORMES is patented. It's David Hudson's thing, I think, and it usually only specifically refers to stuff like gold and silver and very precious fine things. But anyway, in the history of it, they found this to be so. They found it in this monatomic form, and then started, I think, doing research in history that they actually had found it before in some Egyptian tombs, and that there's reference to it, I think, in Egyptian scrolls or something like that, and that's where the name Mufkuts comes from. It's this weird term, and some people call it that. It literally is like MFFFFF. I don't know. It's weird. Um, and they were wondering why these pharaohs and other special people were buried with this white powdery substance. That also is, I believe, the origin of the term mana, where people are calling Ormus mana, because it naturally evokes the question, what is it? And mana means, what is it? In the Bible, that was the stuff that fell from heaven when God needed to feed the Israelites, and they were complaining, and he said, here. And there was this white powder stuff that was on the floor, and so they took it, and it tasted like flat cakes with honey, which is not what Ormus tastes like, so I don't believe that there's actually any connection there. However, a lot of people like to link that story with the whole Ormus mythos and the Egyptian thing as well, because there is that Egyptian Israelite connection, you know, sort of. Same region, they borrowed a lot of stuff mythologically, and so it's there. But what were the Egyptians doing with it? Nobody knows. So hopefully, or probably, they were giving it to their special priest king pharaoh, so that he could ascend. That's what we would call it today, because they did believe that he was divine, she was divine, and they would, presumably New Agers typically think that the pyramids were some type of ascension technology anyway. And so if you have this greater functioning throughout your system, you have this electrical current that is able to run through you, or I would just call it vital or dynamic energy, able to run through your system all the time, and then you put yourself into one of these ascension machines, you're just gonna go much, 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 much further, much, 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 much faster. And so I think that's what they were doing. Um, I don't know how they got it though. Ormus can also be extracted from soil, and so you can get it that way. It's a much more difficult process. I'm trying to figure out how my mustache is supposed to be. Yeah. Um, so They started doing experiments with it, I think, in the lab, David Hudson and all of them, because they started to become obsessed with this crazy substance that nobody seemed to know about. And they also found that it is superconductive. That's something I probably should have mentioned in the other video. Ormus is a superconductor. And so when you have these things, and it also demonstrates, this is where people get some of the crazy stuff like levitation and, ultimate transcendence or whatever, which I don't particularly believe in. Um, and not believe in, but believe in from Ormus. Okay, um, is that it also it demonstrates some strange abilities, as in translocation. Ormus elements have been known to jump from one side of the test thing to the other. It is a superconductor at room temperature, and so that is very impressive to a lot of people. Um, you want to take a superconductor into your body? Well, why not? I mean, this is what we're this is what all this stuff is about, right? We're talking about increasing the efficiency of the energy flow of the body or whatever. That's what we want, okay? So at the Western scientific level, it's a superconductor at room temperature, which doesn't really happen. Then what does that mean for me? For me, it just means I'm taking something into my body that is going to help all of the energy flow better and stronger. And it's one of those things that's difficult to define. Is this clearing out my system so that I can receive more dynamic energy? Yes. But is it also the dynamic energy itself? Yes. Ormus gives you that energy. It is like liquid chi, and a lot of people, I think that's even a trademarked name for Ormus. Liquid chi is out there somewhere. Someone is selling that type of Ormus and calling it liquid chi. That's a pretty good description of it, at least for me, because when you do qigong, you have exactly, let's say you're just starting to get into qigong and you get into it really heavily. You can get what's called dragon sickness. You're taking in too much energy from your body, too much good dynamic energy. I always forget that that's there. taking in too much dynamic Taking in too much dynamic energy into the body, too much fresh chi, and you get sick because your body can't handle it. You get you might get cold like symptoms, you feel really weak, and you have no energy, and you're like, what the hell, man? I thought this stuff was supposed to give me more energy. What's going on? Well, it is because your body is not used to those levels of energy and is having a reaction. Okay, and I'm talking about Qigong. The exact same thing will happen, and in a couple days, everything will balance out. All that negative Qi that you needed to break up and process is going to be processed, as in it's going to leave your system. You still do some light energy work in order to keep yourself, flowing, keep the energy flowing. And then a couple days later, you're going to feel really, really good. You're going to feel a lot of dynamic energy. You're going to feel a lot of vitality. You're going to feel energized. You're going to get up earlier. You're going to maybe have trouble sleeping, but I don't really find that to be the case when you're doing a lot of energy work, unless you practice really late at night and really get into it and get some stuff moving through you. Yeah. The same thing with Ormus. So you'll take it for a couple days and you'll feel, okay, this is good. And then you take it, and if you've got a lot of stuff to move out of your system, you might feel like, whoa, what's going on? Why am I supposed to feel like this? I don't feel good. It's not making me feel good. I thought it was supposed to be good for your immune system. I thought I was supposed to feel, waves of energy, blah, 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 blah. You're lying to me. This is crap. Um, just wait. Because it will move out of your system. Take less, just a tiny little bit. Like, this is already watered down. This is water. I just wanted to show you, that's way more than enough. Okay, you take less than that. That's me. Because this was already watered down. Um, this is probably one dose for you guys, and I'm recommending about a teaspoon in an 8-ounce glass of water. I have 1 cup of water. I guess that's 8 ounces. Yeah. Um, and take a little bit less, back off, and then you'll start to notice things move through. And in a couple days, those symptoms will go away. You'll feel lighter. You'll feel more vibrant and dynamic. You'll feel energy expansion and all that kind of stuff, and you won't regret it. Okay, so let's see, what else were they doing? That's pretty much all the history that I know of it. People started picking up on it in the New Age movements, and just again, there's a lot of crap out there, and I don't mean the Ormus products. People talk about how it is an absorber and reflector of energy. And so, because it is a superconductor and very, very sensitive to energies, I will pack it. I don't think I have an example here, but I will pack it in a EMF resistant bag. It basically is a plastic bag, but it has metal in it so that it keeps everything away, so that it's not going to be damaged by any postal service ray guns and whatever it's being exposed to on the trip to your home. Probably should make that more clear. People are very sensitive about what this stuff is exposed to. I also want to say it has become a mystical new age type substance, not just because of the translocative properties and the superconductivity or whatever. It's become a new age substance because energy healers and people who are into this stuff can actually feel what it's doing. If I sit here and energize it, it soaks it up and soaks it up and soaks it up and soaks it up, and so it's not like energizing a crystal where it's like it'll go into it and then I'll just feel this like disconnection and the energy moves and disperses. Like going into this, to me, and I should probably mention this as well, I try to stick to the scientific stuff so that people are satisfied in that way. But to me, Ormus is like the spirit element. And again, it's chi, it's like liquid chi, but it's like the stuff that's in between the physical matter. And for some reason I always deal with the stuff that's in between the physical matter. Like the Akadawa is very similar. It's like an energy that's in between physical energy and subtle energy. Ormus is very similar, but it's a substance, an actual substance I can point to and say, this will make you healthier. If you're not doing all of the energy work that I recommend that you're doing, or that we would all like to be doing, or whatever, you can take this stuff and know that you're doing something really good for your body that is in between. That's not just taking a supplement, that's not just taking an herb or whatever, but you are ingesting what I consider to be a spirit elemental. I gave it to a Coyote. I gave him a bottle once, and he just like tunes into it. He's like, "Oh, it's like an elemental, isn't it?" I was like, "Yeah, actually, it is. Like, it's got this very light, airy quality. If you do connect to it psychically or energetically, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. An elemental has a sort of consciousness, whether it's concretized, I don't know how else to say it, whether that consciousness is coalesced in a physical form or not. An elemental consciousness seems to be sort of everywhere at once. We have this sense that when you connect to an elemental like a water elemental, they are that sort of sheath of energy in between the spirit and the physical, in between the limits of that thing, such as water, that you're connecting to, that is not the water itself. It is the spirit of that water, and it's much different. It's really hard to explain. And then when you connect to Ormus, I find, at least the ones that I know, it is much more like connecting to an elemental type of consciousness rather than connecting to something crude like raw lapis. I can connect to this, and it is lapis lazuli, and it's beautiful. And it's falling. But connecting to it, you get that very earthy centered feeling, and it's sort of contained to itself. Elementals don't seem to be contained to themselves. When you connect to that portion, that element, I guess, of whatever it is, when you connect to that elemental consciousness, then it seems to be much more airy and dispersed and basic. Basic as in, it's not a deity or a human created type of consciousness or entity that's going to talk to you or that's going to feed you really information. It just is what it is for itself. It's an elemental. I don't know how else to describe it. It's like an urge. It's like a just one specific thought form of the universe that shall never be changed. And so Ormus is like that. Okay, I hope I've confused you.